Welcome to the weekly Health RX by Arvasi. I'm Dr. Avanti Kumar Singh.
And I'm Dr. Tanmeet Sethi. We're physicians trained in modern medicine and experts in Ayurveda. And each Sunday, we cut through the noise with physician-led, science-backed prescriptions personalized to your biology.
From your hormones and gut to your circadian rhythm and nervous system, we'll help you take care of the systems that matter most so you can stop guessing and start feeling better. Finally, medicine that fits you. Hello and welcome. This is your weekly Health RX for the week of February 15th. I'm Dr. Avanti Kumar Singh.
And I'm Dr. Tanmeet Sethi. And this week, we're starting with a new series on mood. But before we even get started, let's just take a moment for some real talk, because we're talking about mood. And we know, we feel it, and we know the world is really, really hard right now. And we're not going to pretend that any series or any wellness solves that. I mean, it just doesn't, right? But, especially when we're talking about mood, it's important for us to name that anxiety, that anger, all those emotions you're feeling, they're appropriate. They're appropriate to real world circumstances and even your personal life, right? They're always appropriate. But what we can do is say, now I'm feeling all this. How do I help my mind and body respond and manage these emotions, so that you're not consumed by them or overwhelmed by them? And more importantly, so you can think clearly. Because if you want to take action where action matters, it's important to not numb out. But there's a real difference between using wellness as bypass and understanding how nourishing yourself is a form of protest. It's about being resourced enough to show up, not only for yourself, but for the people you love and for all the things that matter to you. So when we're talking about mood this whole time, I want you to really hold that in your heart, because it's not a way of doing something other than managing the world. It is managing the world.
Yeah, I think that's, so important to really think about that. There's always going to be these stressors in our life, right? That are outside of our control. Actually, most of it's outside of our control.
Yeah.
And I think the real skill comes in just learning how to respond and how to do it in a way that's taking care of yourself, right? And I think that's what you're also speaking to. And we're really hoping that through this series on mood, we can help you with some of those tools of things that you can use to resource yourself in those moments when things feel like it's just everything is too much. I mean, I know I'm feeling that every day right now, all the time. And so I have to go back to those tools constantly to keep myself nourished and myself calm in the sense of so that I can function in the world. Otherwise, I think I would just curl up and be like, I can't take it, Yeah. So that's really, I think, what we really want to make sure is that, we're going to be starting this new series on mood for the next 4 weeks. And, we came from talking about energy, talking about mitochondria and your cortisol response. But, mood, your actual mood is actually very tied to your energy. And so that's why we also wanted to talk about it next, is because they go hand in hand. And, a lot of us are, again, feeling like we need some tools to help with the anxiety that we are feeling in the world. And so this kind of felt like the perfect thing to talk about this next series.
Yeah. And I mean, that's why we're starting with something really specific, right? Anxiety. So, as usual, we always start by asking you how you're really doing, like not politely, but really, how are you doing? Because like we said, it's hard. It's not only a hard world, but you likely have your own hard things happening. And, if we look at the seasonal context of this mood series, in Ayurveda, we're still in Shishira Ritu, which is deep winter. And we talked about this a little bit during the energy series. But here's what's different now is that the shortest days are actually behind us. Thank God. The days are technically getting longer. But, then we end up wondering, why does February feel harder than January if it's getting longer. But we have something called cumulative darkness, where your serotonin stores have been depleting all winter. Vitamin D levels are at their lowest of the year. The holiday adrenaline is long gone. And, in January, you may have still been running on fumes. And then February is when you really start to feel it. So, you put everything in the world and your personal life on top of that. And, it's no wonder that it can feel harder this month.
Yeah. I mean, we're feeling this ourselves personally, me and you, the Meath also, but also we're hearing this from all of you, and I think that I hear this every year from people who are coming to my talks and, that I'm seeing. Of just feeling in February, like, I don't really feel like myself. I don't actually feel sad, but it's sort of like they don't have words to explain how they're feeling, that they just don't feel like themselves the way that they could respond or the way they usually respond. They're just not able to do that. They're snapping at everyone and they don't know why. Or they're feeling so anxious, low grade all the time. Somebody who maybe doesn't feel anxious usually during the year, doesn't have that experience, is all of a sudden just feeling anxious like 24 hours a day. And I can really identify with that because I'm not actually an anxious person, but I know that by this time, because of all the things that have accumulated, and then you add the world on top of it, I just have this low grade anxiety that is very uncomfortable because I'm not used to feeling that way. Not that anybody should feel that way, but certain doshas do sort of deal with a little bit more of that anxious feeling more than others. And I know for a Pitta Kapha like me, I don't feel that usually. So this is really bothering me because I'm like, I don't know how to deal with this low grade anxiety that I'm feeling.
Yeah. And if you heard yourself in any of that, what Avanti was saying, the important thing is to know that you're not losing your mind. You're not weak. You're not, quote unquote, just stressed out. For all our women out there in midlife, who we're really wanting to focus on, something real has changed in your biology. And today we're going to explain exactly what that is. So, we're going to talk about what's actually happening so that once you understand that, everything can make more sense.
Yeah, exactly. And, we're so big on really explaining the science for this reason. So let's get into what the science is here. Really, it's a lot. The story here is about estrogen and neurotransmitters, right? The chemicals that are released by our brain. And so, during the energy series that we did the last 4 weeks, we introduced you to two ideas, right? The mitochondria, those power plants in your cells, and then that alarm clock, that cortisol awakening response, right? The stress hormone that you have. And so today we're going to add two more ideas with that so that you can get more of a complete picture of what's going on. So we have something called GABA, which you can think of as sort of your brain's braking system. It is the primary neurotransmitter that helps us to calm down. The thing that says to us, we're safe, we can calm ourselves down, we can settle ourselves down. Now, as in a car, when your brakes work well, right, you see something where you need to stop and you can stop, you can respond appropriately. Now, when your brakes are not working well, you see something and you need to stop and you're not able to stop. That's the same thing of what's going on in your brain. When your brakes are working well, when the GABA response is working correctly, you'll feel a stressor, you respond, and then you can calm back down. But in perimenopause, this brake system starts to wear out and it's not as responsive in the way that you want it to be, right? This is because estrogen is actually a master regulator of many of the neurotransmitters, serotonin, dopamine, GABA. All of these neurotransmitters actually affect your mood. And when estrogen is fluctuating in perimenopause, it also causes a fluctuation in these neurotransmitters, right? And it's not just estrogen. That's an important point that a lot of people miss. Progesterone also has an effect on neurotransmitters. It actually produces neurosteroids that directly regulate the GABA, which is your brakes. So they actually interact. And so as progesterone drops in perimenopause, your GABA regulation falters even more. The brakes wear down even more. So you have estrogen that is causing this decrease of the GABA response. And then you also have progesterone on top of that is also affecting it. So you've got the same women, right? All of us are here We have maybe the same life circumstances, the same stressors, but we have a different emotional response because the brakes aren't working as well.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, think about it like a thermostat, that your thermostat in perimenopause is just turned way down. So what it used to maybe not set you off now does. And the HPA axis, which controls your stress response, is the physiology that aligns with this. Estrogen normally helps regulate that system, but as it declines, their stress response is easier to set off. And so I would say that's not a bad thing as we get older. I mean, that means that we're more true to what we really are bothered by. And I would really, take that and hold that as truth. And it is hard to always be functioning that way, and so navigating that really is important for us to feel like we can think clearly and to do the best things we can with that lower thermostat, right? I wouldn't want any of us to have a higher thermostat necessarily, but we want to be able to respond in a way that allows us to use it more clearly.
And there's also that piece of, the time of year, right? And this is that sort of seasonal affective disorder that we were kind of alluding to, that reduced light exposure that we've been going through in the winter months, right? That also suppresses our serotonin production. And serotonin is one of the neurotransmitters that helps us have a better mood. We also have melatonin that is shifting, right? So that disrupts our sleep. So all of these things sort of come together to cause a lot of issues with the neurotransmitters that help us maintain our mood a little bit higher. So you're adding a lot of different pieces here. The world, the stressors, estrogen and progesterone going down, and then the time of year that's also having an effect on these neurotransmitters.
Right. So all of this science, all of this physiology, is really important to know. But what's frustrating for me sometimes is that as much as all of us experience changes during this transition, how it shows up in our body is completely different depending on our constitution or our dosha. And so, some of us, anxiety is constantly in our mind, racing thoughts and spiraling. Other women, it shows up as irritability. They're not anxious in the traditional sense. Maybe they're more angry. And some women feel both at the same time. This is all driven by our biology, by our doshas. And so it matters how we actually think about managing that in our bodies, because what Avanti needs isn't what I need, right? We have different doshas. And so what we're going to do for the next 4 weeks is exactly that, is look at our personalized biology week by week. We're going to give you the tools for your mood pattern. And it starts with seeing your pattern, right? And that's what the dosha episodes really do this week.
Yeah, that's why it's so important to understand your mind-body constitution or your dosha. And so if you haven't taken the dosha data assessment yet, go to mayarvasi.com. It's linked in the show notes for you. It just takes 5 to 7 minutes and it'll help you understand what your specific mood pattern is based on your dosha. And once you know this, you can really start to understand how to address that mood issue that you're having and how to address your anxiety and how it shows up for you. Once you know your dosha, you actually will unlock your personalized dosha episode because we record a specific episode for each of the 5 types every week. And this will go deep into your specific anxiety pattern, the biology behind it, and a protocol that will help you in the moment when you're feeling that anxiety starting. And I want to remind you that the general episode that you heard is always free. But the dosha-specific episodes where you get your specific anxiety pattern and a specific protocol for your specific biology, those are part of our paid subscription. So if you haven't taken the dosha data assessment yet, go to mayarvasi.com and we'll link it in the show notes for you. It just takes 5 to 7 minutes. And once you know your dosha, you unlock your personalized episode. Okay, friends, that's your weekly Health RX for this week. Next week, we're getting into the pattern interrupt protocols, what to actually do when the anxiety or the irritability hits, in the moment tools that you can use exactly in that moment. Until then, be well. Thanks for listening to the Weekly Health RX by Arvasi. Be sure to subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen so you never miss your weekly prescription.
And make sure to take the Urvasi Dosha Data Assessment at myurvasi.com, linked in the show notes, so you can unlock your biology and get your own personalized weekly prescription.